Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 25. सने सनेव उपमेत बुद्ध्या धृति गृहीतया आत्मसंस्थं मनं कृत्वा न कचिदपि चिन्तयेत्.
Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in a trance by means of intelligence, sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else.
Text 26. यतो यतो निचलन्ति मनः चञ्चलः स्थिरं ततस्ततो नियम्येतत् आत्मनेव वसंनयत्.
From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self.
प्रशान्तमनसं हीनं योगिनं सुखोत्तमम् उपेति शान्तरजसं ब्रह्मभूतमकल्पसम्.
The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds.
युजनेवं सदात्मानं योगी विगतकल्मषः सुखेन ब्रह्मस्पर्शं अत्यन्तं सुखौष्यते.
Thus, the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord.
सर्वभूतस्थ आत्मानं सर्वभूतानि चात्मनि ईक्षते योगयुक्तात्मा सर्वत्र समदर्शनः.
The true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees everything being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere.
यो मा पश्यन्ति सर्वत्र सर्वश्च मयि पश्यति तस्याहं न प्रणश्यामि स च मे न प्रणश्यति.
For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me.
सर्वभूतस्थितं यो मां भजन्ते कृत्वा आस्थितः सर्वथा वर्तमानोऽपि स योगी मयि वर्तते.
Such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that I and the Supersoul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances.
632. आत्मा अपयेन सर्वत्र समपश्यन्ति योऽर्जुन सुखं वा यदि वा दुःखं स योगी परमो मतः.
He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna.
633. Arjuna uvacha योऽयं योगस्त्वया प्रोक्तः साम्येन मधुसूदन एतस्याहं न पश्यामि चञ्चलत्वास्थितं स्थिराम्.
Arjuna said, "O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady."
634. चञ्चलं हि मनः कृष्ण प्रमाथि बलवद्वदं तस्याहं निग्रहं मन्ये वायोरिव सुदस्करम्
The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind.
635 श्रीभगवानुवाच असंशयं महाबाहो मनोदुनिग्रहं चलम् अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येण च गृह्यते.
Lord Sri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment.
36 असंयन्ता आत्मना योगो दुष्पापम् इति मे मति वश्यात्मना तु यत्तथा शक्यो प्राप्तुमुपायत.
For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work, but he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion.
637 अर्जुना उवाच आयति श्रद्धयोपेतो योगाचलितमानसः अप्राप्य योगसंसिद्धिं कां गति कृष्ण गच्छति.
Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of an unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism?
638 कश्चिन्नो भयं विभष्टं छिन्नाभ्रमिव नश्यति अप्रतिष्ठतु महाबाहो विमुधो भ्रमणापथि.
O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere?
639 एतन्मे संशयं कृष्ण चेत्तु महास्पशेषत तदन्य संशयस्यास्य चेता न युपपद्यते.
This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt.
श्री भगवान् उवाच पार्थनेवेह नामूत्र विनाशात्तस्य विद्यते न हि कल्याणकृ दुर्गतिं तात गच्छति.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Son of Pritha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities, does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil.
प्राप्य पुण्यकृता लोकान् उस्वित्वा शाश्वती समा शुचिना श्रीमता गेहे योगभ्रष्टोऽभिजायते.
The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy.
642 अथवा योगिना एव कुले भवति एतति दुर्लभतरं लोके जन्म यदीदृशम्.
Or, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly, such a birth is rare in this world.
तत्रं त्वं बुद्धिसंयोगं लभते पूर्वदेहिकं यत ते च ततो भूय संसिद्धो कुरु नन्दन.
On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru.
Meena Mataji, are you here still?
Sorry, I was mute. पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनेव हीयते यवसोऽपि स जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य शब्दब्रह्माति वर्तते.
By virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures.
प्रयत्नाध्यतमानस्तु योगी संशुद्धि किल्बिष अनेक जन्म संसिद्धस्ततो याति परां गतिम्.
And when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately, achieving perfection after many, many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal.
तपस्विभ्योऽधिको योगी ज्ञानिभ्योऽपि मतोऽधिकः कर्मिभ्यश्चाधिको योगी तस्माद् योगी भवार्जुन.
A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruited worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi.
Text 47. योगिना अपि सर्वेषां मदतेरात्म आत्मना श्रद्धावान् भजते यो मा स मे युक्ततमो मतः.
And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. That is my opinion.
इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीता उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्याया योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्ण अर्जुन संवादे आत्मसंयम योगो नाम षष्ठो अध्यायः. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Meena Mataji, and thank you, and Prabhu. Very nice recitation.
Very nice. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So, welcome, dear devotees, to today's sad chat. It's not sad, certainly. Chat session. And we continue our reading for chapter number 6. And today we will do 34, I think. So let me get the verses together. Well, actually, I think I got it in a PowerPoint slide. Yeah, we do 34 today. Before we discuss the verse, let's recite the Mangala Charana prayers. You can also recite it via unmuted mics. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutidevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivashari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadi Shatarine. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we continue reading chapter number 6 entitled Dhyana Yoga. And we are reading now text number 34. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadridham tasyaham nigraham manye vayor iva sudushkaram. The word for word synonyms. Chanchalam, flickering. He, certainly. Manaha, mind. Krishna, O Krishna. Pramati, agitating. Bhalavat, vat, strong. Dridham, obstinate. Tasya, its. Aham, high. Nigraham, subduing. Manye, I think. Vayo, of the wind. Eva, like. Sudushkaram, difficult. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The mind is so strong and obstinate that it sometimes overcomes the intelligence. Although the mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence. For a man in the practical world who has to fight so many opposing elements, it is certainly very difficult to control the mind. Artificially, one may establish a mental equilibrium toward both friend and enemy, but ultimately no worldly man can do so, for this is more difficult than controlling the raging wind. In the Vedic literature, the Katha Upanishad 1, 3, 3 and 4, it is said, Atmanam ratinam vidi, shariram ratam evacha, buddhim tu saratim vidi, manaha pragraham evacha, indriyani ayan aho, vishayam steshu gocharan, atmanindriya manhu yuktam, Bhakteti ahur manisinaha. The individual is the passenger in the car of the material body, and intelligence is the driver. Mind is the driving instrument, and the senses are the horses. The self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in the association of the mind and senses. So it is understood by great thinkers. Intelligence is supposed to direct the mind, but the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes even one's intelligence. As an acute infection may surpass the efficacy of medicine. Such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. And what can we say of modern man? The simile used here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind, and it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easiest way to control the mind is suggested by Lord Chaitanya. He's chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra for deliverance in all humility. The method prescribed is Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna. Only then will there remain no other engagements to agitate the mind. So the verse again, the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So this verse, as we've been reading from yesterday, is spoken by Arjuna. Lord Krishna just described, as Arjuna says in summary, the Ashtanga Yoga process. And Arjuna in the previous verse had frankly declared that he does not think that this particular process described by Krishna is practical for him. And he says not only practical, but unendurable. To endure means you have to sustain it. You know, for success in spiritual life, we have to be engaged in a process that is sustainable. Sustainable meaning practical and at the same time enjoyable. Anything that's impractical and only causes one anxiety is not endurable or sustainable. So Arjuna said this process is not practical or endurable to him. And the main reason he declared this position is because the mind is restless and unsteady. And in this verse, Arjuna simply reinforces his previous statement. And he uses 4 words here to describe the mind: restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. And he declares that he thinks that it is more difficult to control the wind and to control. It's more difficult to control the mind than control the wind. And it's a very appropriate metaphor or analogy, because everybody knows we can't control the wind. The wind just acts on its own accord. And it's not possible for any living entity to control the wind. But Arjuna is saying, I think it's easier to control the wind than control the mind, just to give us some perspective of how difficult it is. Now, let's just quickly go through some of the words that Arjuna uses. I'll start off by obstinate. What is the meaning of obstinate?
Stubborn.
Stubborn, yes. Any other? Obstinate means, yes, stubborn, won't listen, not open to suggestion, very fixed in its own opinion. So this is the nature of the mind. Once the mind fixes itself on some particular subject matter, it is very difficult to control it. Let's say, for example, sometimes we may have an altercation with somebody, a little fight. And the mind starts to dwell on it. We ruminate, just constantly ruminate, how this happened, why it happened, why he behaved like this. And then we may try to say the mind, what, this is not doing us any good. It's simply making us miserable and making us become inimical. So please just forget it, the mind. Just forget it. But the mind will not listen. Mind is obstinate, will keep trying to raise the matter again, bring it. We may say, okay, I'm forgetting about it, I'm going. A few minutes later, it will rise again. This is the nature of the mind, very obstinate. Turbulent. Turbulence is like when you go on the plane, the pilot will say, please fasten your seat belts now. We are going to go through some turbulence. And when you go through the turbulence, the plane rocks and everyone gets a little scared. Because the nature of turbulence is it disrupts the balance. It disrupts the balance, and it is, how can I say, it's upsetting. It makes your stomach churn and so on. So the nature of the mind, it always upsets the equilibrium we want to have in our lives. From nowhere, sometimes a thought would come, and it'll sow a seed, and then from there, everything will go. Restless, the mind is restless. We all have experience of this. We all have experience of this, how restless the mind is. We want to sit quietly and read or chant and just absorb our thoughts in Krishna. But the mind is so restless. It wants this. Oh, give me some food. You're hungry now. Oh, look at your phone. What notification popped up now? Or make a call, or do a to-do list. So many things are there, and very strong. It's very, very strong. Even great personalities have become overcome by the mind. There's one story of two monks. They were about to cross the river. And then an elderly lady came and said, I have great difficulty crossing the river. I can't do it on my own. Would one of you gentlemen be so kind to carry me on your back across the river? Then one of the monks volunteered, and the lady jumped on his back, and then he took her across and left her. And then the two monks went on their own way, and the lady went on her way. Then the monk who didn't carry the lady on the back, he started to say to the man, why did you do that? Don't you know, as monks, we shouldn't be in contact with women, even if she's old? You've broken all the principles. And for the next 2 hours, all he did was go on and on and on about how this other monk had did something so bad. And then the monk who carried the woman stopped. And he said, you know what? I carried that lady on my back for 5 minutes. You've been carrying on your mind for the last 2 hours. So many, even great personalities, their mind has taken over. Anyone can remember any personality that their mind completely took over, either in literature, famous literature, or the Shastras?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Jet Bharat with the deer.
Yes, he couldn't stop thinking about the deer even while he was doing his puja. Very good example. Anyone else?
Vilbha Mangal.
Thakur, yes. He couldn't forget the prostitute. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, can we say Arjuna?
Arjuna, why Arjuna?
Because I think he was more into, he says he couldn't control his mind, which moves really, because he's persistently going on thinking low about himself, and the mind was taking over all his emotions. I don't know whether that is perfecting or not, Prabhuji.
Now it is befitting because he stood on the battlefield and his mind started to take over.
Take over, yes.
These are my family members. He started presenting different arguments to Krishna and his mind went full swing. Yes. And you can...
Dhruva Maharaj, he also like his father said something and he was like his mind was saying, no, I want this kingdom greater than my father and grandfather.
Yeah, yes. Taike's mind was poisoned by Manthara and she got to the point where she asked Lord Ram to be exiled. Sorry, Prabhu, one of you were going to say something.
A Saubara Muni who tried to do his austerities under the water,
Yes.
but he got agitated by looking at the fish.
Yeah, he saw two fish copulating just for a moment when he opened his eyes. And that image just stayed with him for so long, so long. So this is the nature of the mind. It can completely overcome us. And Prabhupada says in the purport, and we can see actually in this example, Arjuna was a very highly elevated soul. In the second verse, Krishna says, Kutastva kasmalamidam vishame samupastitam anarya justam ashvagaryam ashvargyam akirti karam Arjuna. Krishna says, Arjuna, my dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. So Arjuna was known as an Aryan. An Aryan means one who knows the value of life. And such people, they are very controlled in their mind. And even Arjuna, we can see in his own life as a student, once his guru gave them all this task to shoot the eye of the bird on the tree. And, Dronacharya asked his various students, what do you see? They said, I saw the tree. And what else do you see? I see the bird. And another student, what do you see? I see the bird and I see the leaves, I see the trunk and so on. In this way, he asked so many students what they see. And Arjuna said, I see the eye of the bird. What else, Arjuna? I see nothing else, the eye of the bird. What else, Arjuna? The eye of the bird. So Arjuna, he was very fixed in one sense. But even now, he declares that the mind is too powerful for him. And the purport, Prabhupada says that. Prabhupada says that it is very difficult to control the mind. And what chance does a worldly man have? And Prabhupada says a worldly man, he has so many thoughts going on. He's thinking about his work. He's thinking about his maintenance. He's thinking about his family. He's thinking about paying the bills. There are so many things that occupy the mind of a worldly person. So how much difficult it would be for him to control the mind. And it is very difficult. The essence here is it's very difficult to control the mind. But then Prabhupada...
Sorry, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, can I just add one thing? Srila Prabhupada, also we could give him an example because he fixated his mind on his Guruji and nothing else came into his mind. He just remembered only what his promise was to the Guru. And that also could be given as an example maybe.
Of one who is, yes, that's
fixing
true.
his mind so much, and that's why we could get to see all this, because he was so fixated on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj that he had to fulfill his promise. He has to fulfill his promise. He has to fulfill his promise.
Yes, very much so. That's a positive example of fixing one's mind. We'll come back to that.
Sorry, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome to add your comments. So Prabhupada, after declaring in the purport how difficult it's to control the mind, And Prabhupada is agreeing it's more difficult to control the mind than control the wind. Then Prabhupada quotes this verse from the Katha Upanishad, which explains where the mind is situated. And this picture we normally see in the Bhagavad Gita explains we have the body, and in the body we have the five senses. And the five senses are controlled to be like raging horses. You can see in this picture here, these also horses, they're not very calm, collected. This black one is rearing its legs up. The next one doing the same thing. The blue one is looking back. So these are very wild horses. And they are pulling someone in a chariot. And there's a driver. So this verse from the Katha Upanishad gives a very nice analogy, comparing the senses in our body to be like wild horses. The reins are like the mind. The driver is the intelligence. The chariot is the body, and the passenger is the soul. Now, if we have wild horses and we have reins being pulled and we have a weak driver, then this chariot will be pulled here, there, everywhere, and even will land up in some accident. So the Vedas explain to us that we have the body and then we have the senses. Higher than the senses is the mind. Higher than the mind is the intelligence, and higher than the intelligence is the soul. So in this respect, if we look at this analogy, the only way this situation can come under control is if the driver is very strong, very competent in controlling the senses and controlling the mind. Therefore, the Vedas say that one who is of strong intelligence, only those persons will be able to control the mind. In the purport, Prabhupada says, gives a nice metaphor. It says just sometimes, if we have an infection and we give ourselves some medicine, normally we would expect the medicine to surpass and overcome the infection. But if the infection is very strong, then the medicine loses its efficacy. So in the same way, intelligence is higher than the mind. And under normal circumstances, a living entity using one's intelligence should be able to overcome the dictates of the mind. But when intelligence is weak, that is not possible. That's when we see the mind taking over. So one of the solutions then is to really make our intelligence very strong. So the next question will be, how do we make our intelligence strong? How do we strengthen our intelligence? And Prabhupada writes, and quoting the various Vedic literatures, by Krishna consciousness, by strong Krishna consciousness, by strong sadhana, we control the mind, the intelligence. Like say, one very practical example. We want to get up for Mangal Arti, and then our alarm goes. The first thing the mind will say, it's cold. You slept late. You can catch up your chanting during the day. I think, it'll do you better if you sleep. you take a little more rest. But the intelligence should say, no, life is very short. I can die anytime. If I don't chant my rounds, my day is ruined. So I will get up now. I will get up now. So the intelligence overcomes the dictates of the mind. But that intelligence, if it was not so fixed in its goal, if that intelligence was not strong, saying, no, my goal is fixed. My goal is fixed. My Krishna consciousness is the most important aspect of my life. I have taken a vow to chant 16 rounds every day. If I don't get up early and chant, I know I'll be struggling. I won't be chanting. So we have to strengthen our intelligence. We have to strengthen our intelligence. And in the same way, what makes the mind strong? What makes the mind strong? When the mind is engaged in sense gratification. The mind says, oh, you should eat this. Oh, you should have a snack now. You should do this. You should watch some TV. Oh, look at the phone. Look at the phone. You know, just see what messages have come through. Just see what your friends are doing. The mind will pull. And in this Kali Yuga, in these days and age, this phone has become a very good ally of the mind. Very good ally of the mind. People have little notification go ping. Immediately, if you're doing something too, that ping attracts the person. Oh, what is it? Who's done that? Even when they're driving, people, so many accidents, they can't bear it. They have to look. What is there? What is there? And this phones, it's called smartphones. Actually, it's not really smartphones. It's made us very dumb, these phones. Because what happens, it is helped to strengthen the mind. It has helped to strengthen the mind, and it's weakened our intelligence. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Payanal, Payusa Sabya, Kalavasmin Yuge Jana, Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagyahi, Upadritaha. That in this age of Kali, men almost always have short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. We, having taken birth in this Kali Yuga, we've already got a bad bargain. So we got to be very, very careful. If we are really serious about our spiritual lives, we have to always be conscious about the mind, and we should make our intelligence strong by practicing Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says, it's like the stomach and the tongue. If you starve it, it becomes weak. And if you don't constantly feed it, it becomes weak. The senses become weak. In the same way, the mind, we should not entertain its dictates. I was reading one book today by Venu Gopal Prabhu, where he says there are different aspects of controlling the mind. The first thing you have to do is not entertain it. Not entertain it. And then you should develop techniques which are given in the scriptures for controlling the mind. And I just want to now go back to the scripture, and we'd studied this previously, but it's always good in today's context to just revise what we have read. 17:16. Krishna, in this 16th verse of the 17th chapter, the Lord explains What are the austerities of the mind? I just briefly want to read that again and just go through the purport, and then we can stop there. So we have to make the mind austere. And the Lord explains in the 16th verse how we can make the mind austere. Krishna says, satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, to make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. And how do you detach it from sense gratification? Prabhupada said, it should be so trained that it always can be thinking of doing good for others. I actually found this very, very insightful, what Prabhupada says there. How to detach the mind from sense gratification. Prabhupada gives a very unique method. He says if we can always be thinking of how to do good for others. And this is Srila Prabhupada's ingenious way in the Krishna consciousness movement. To help the fallen souls in this Kali Yuga to become detached from the mind. Prabhupada taught that we should detach our minds by always thinking of others, by engaging in the Sankirtan movement, being busy 24 hours a day. One Srila Prabhupada's very intimate disciple, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he came to Prabhupada, he put his bead back on Prabhupada's table, and he said, I quit. I've had enough. And Prabhupada thought it very funny. He says, oh, why? He said, oh, they were building the temple in Bombay at that time. He said, the builders are cheating us. The cement merchants are overcharging us. Then they're cheating us. They're not giving us pure cement. And then he went to give a long list of problems he had. And then Prabhupada said, whew, that's very good. You are so busy having to think about Krishna service, 24 hours, there's no time for your mind to run away on something else. And then Maharaj tells one story. He said once he was on a train in India, second-class train. And he was sitting, he had his little seat there, and he was comfortable. Then a man came with his family, man, his wife, and his skinny son. So first the mother and father told the son, go sit next to the man, meaning next to Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So you know how it is, that in India they come, no problem, no problem, squeezed in, and he sat next to Maharaj. And Maharaj, moved, like squeezed up. And then the man, he said, okay, he thinks he also needs a seat. So he went and he squeezed himself next to his son. And he said, no problem, no problem. And then the man's fat wife came. And then she saw a spot and she went and she squeezed herself. And result, Maharaj had to leave, get up and leave. They took over the seat. No problem, no problem. And Maharaj says the story, if you let one thought go into the mind, one thought to go into the mind, it from there it will grow. As they say, the idle mind is a devil's workshop. So Prabhupada gave us this Krishna consciousness movement, and there's so much service to do. Believe me, devotees, day and night we can tax our brain. Yesterday we had a meeting of how we're going to distribute 300 sets of Chaitanya Charitamrita in Gaur Purnima and 600 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then our head was spinning with so many actions we got. So many actions we got. we've got this strategy. We had like 8 strategies, and each of them had so many actions. There's just no time to think if you engage so much in Krishna consciousness. So this is what we should do: become so engaged, especially engaged in the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's so many ways we can be engaged that there's not even one crack through which the mind can enter. Sorry, dear devotees, I went way over today. I'm sorry about that. I'll stop here. I'll take any questions or comments anyone may have. Any realizations? Many of you all are seasoned devotees, are so fixed in your Krishna consciousness, have developed such strong intelligence. Please, dear devotees, feel free to share your own realizations.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
My
Krishna,
humble obeisances to you.
Hare Krishna.
I have a question. When we say, like materially, when we say intelligent, like we mean in material education, those who are, I don't know, those who are very good in their material education, or maybe in their business, or so that's kind of intelligence, yeah. And then we see that obviously they are not materialists, are not Krishna conscious, so their mind is kind of not controlled. So when it says in this verse that the intelligence is higher than the mind, so the intelligence should control the mind, and everything will follow up from top. Materially, we don't see intelligent people like scientists and this and that. They are not intelligent. That means because their minds are not controlled.
Yeah.
I mean, minds are overpowering. So are they intelligent, or are they not intelligent?
According to Vedas, intelligence means spiritual intelligence. What people take to be like having a PhD in material science, that's not considered intelligence at all, because it takes us no further towards the ultimate goal. I'm not sure if any one of you all were listening this morning to Srila Prabhupada's class at Bhaktivedanta Manor. Prabhupada spoke so clearly, so concisely about what is real education. Prabhupada says real education is that which takes us towards the ultimate goal. That which takes us in the opposite direction is not considered intelligence. That is considered ignorance. And I think in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the chapters, Krishna says that's very clearly what constitutes knowledge and what is ignorance. And Krishna gives a long list of what constitutes knowledge. And basically, they are stated mainly as qualities. A symptom of one who's got knowledge is he will have all of these qualities. And if one doesn't have these qualities, it means they are in ignorance. So according to Vedas, yeah, you may have double PhD, but that is not considered, according to Vedic literature, real intelligence. So that type of so-called intelligence, Prabhupada call it, will have no power to control the mind. It's only the spiritual intelligence, the purified intelligence that can control the mind. Does that answer your question, Rupa Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, perfectly. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
There's a question from Surabhi Mataji. Hare Krishna, Surabhi Mataji. Pranam to you too. Instead of actual books, is there future option of paid access to online books, which is more easy to read? Yes, definitely. Not only that, Surabhi Mataji, most of the books, even if you buy Srimad Bhagavatam now, the BBT allows you to have a free version of the ebook. Like anyone who takes Bhagavatam set now, they get the entire Bhagavatam set with the ebook, and even Bhagavad Gita And if you go to our website, BBT Media,
Mhm.
you will see you can get the books in soft copy also.
Okay, thank you. Because it will be much more easy, you know, to read and to access. Because of those big books, you know, and it's too heavy to carry and to read them. So I was just thinking, is there an option to just go online and
Yes, you can go
access
to
something?
Vedabase, Vedabase.io. You can get all of Prabhupada's books there.
Okay, thank you.
I keep both. I keep ebooks and I keep hard copy books.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And your second question is there a fine demarcation between mind, thoughts, and intelligence thoughts, or a stark difference?
Mind thoughts in the sense, you know, the thoughts that, you know, come to us on a hourly basis, or you know, every hour we think about something. And intelligent thoughts are like, you know, how we direct those thoughts. So is there a stark
Yes.
difference, or is there a
Difference in
fine
the-
demarcation, or they just merge into each other? I mean,
Well,
what's the exact answer? I mean,
Prabhupada gives a
we're
very,
thinking about mind and intelligence, and you know, what,
Yeah. like, say, suppose a person uses his intelligence to increase his sense gratification. Then there is not a very strong demarcation, because the mind and the intelligence, they have the same goal. Yeah. And that's sense gratification. In that sense, the demarcation is not pronounced.
Mhm.
But when one has spiritual intelligence, or one has spiritual intelligence that is directing one away from sense gratification towards self-realization, then the demarcation between mind and intelligence is very clear. So it depends what the goal is. If the goal is sense gratification, the demarcation is blurred, because they all have the common goal. But when the intelligence, the goal of the soul and the intelligence is spiritual perfection, self-realization, then there's distinction, clear distinction.
Okay. Okay. But then, okay, thank you. But then we call so many people intelligent, yeah, but they don't follow those texts and all that, and but they are yet called intelligent
Well, like just as I
on a
answered,
daily basis. And then only in this organization, or this part of the you know, scene, we find intelligent means spiritual intelligence. And when we just go out in the real world, you know, those people who are really intelligent, I mean, people who really, you know, do well in their job and all that, they are actually called intelligent. So who is actually with more intelligence here?
I'll ask you a simple question. If someone is not working towards his ultimate good, right? Someone who's got very short-term, prayers, very short-term insight.
Okay, I got the answer. Yeah, you just need to look inwards. Yeah, the soul needs to turn inwards. Yeah, not towards just external goals. Yes, I got the answer.
Yeah, the intelligent person thinks of his ultimate good, long-term good. It's just like if you see a drunken man, he's just interested in having, a quick drink, a quick gratification. You will tell him, this is not good for you. This is not intelligence. You need to think about yourself, your body, your health. Don't think about the immediate gratification. So we will say that drunken man is not being very intelligent about his welfare. So in the same way, those souls that use their so-called intelligence not for their ultimate good, that's not intelligence. Prabhupada said that's foolishness. It's foolishness. Yeah.
So to enjoy in the world, is it foolish? I mean, it's just a layman's question. I mean, if somebody is enjoying, do we call them foolish? I mean, I don't understand.
Well, it's not our opinion, Surabhi Mataji. It's the opinion of Krishna that counts.
Okay,
Our opinion doesn't. But Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he calls such people who only think about the short-term sense gratification. He calls them muddas, foolish. So we can't disagree with Krishna.
True, true. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hare
Hare
Krishna. Thank you.
There's a question here. Oh yes, Mataji, you found the verse. 13th chapter, verses 8 to 12, where Krishna explains, this I declare to be knowledge. And what is contrary to this is ignorance. And as we say, Krishna describes these in terms of qualities. Why? Because one who has knowledge, as Chanakya Pandit says, one who is intelligent, he will see every woman as mother besides his wife, every object of someone else as stool, and there was something else, I forgot. He defines knowledge like that. And as you can see, the Lord gives so many qualities. Thank you for sharing that, Mataji. Okay, any other questions or comments anyone has?
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Namrata Mataji, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Prabhuji?
Krishna, I'm good.
Danvat Pranam. Prabhuji, sometimes, and maybe it's really good, Prabhuji, that now I realize this, Prabhuji, as a reflection, because until now, or until some time before, I used to think when my mind is talking to me, Krishna is talking to me. So how can you tell the difference, Prabhuji, that this time the mind is telling me to do something, sometimes, at work, even anything you're thinking about, how do you know that this time Krishna is giving me a chance to do this, or it's actually my mind playing gimmicks with me?
Very good question. That is answered by our acharyas. And the acharyas say the first two principles of surrender is to accept that which is favorable and to reject that which is not favorable. Then the question is, how do I know what is favorable and what is not favorable? That is told by Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So if you have a thought or a mental idea about something, and sometimes often the mind can even tell you that this is very spiritual. This is very spiritual. Then we should go to Guru. Then we should go to Vaishnava. Then we should go to Shastra and say, find out. Like in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is a nice story about a group of people who thought that Krishna was dancing on Kaliya in the lake. And that was simply their imagination. And one so-called great devotee came to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's secretary and was claiming that they all had all these visions. And Swarup Damodar Goswami immediately dismissed it. He says, this is just your mental speculation. So, sometimes we may have so-called spiritual visions too, but it could be the mind. So if you have any such situation, Namrata Mataji, confirm what's come to your mind or what you're experiencing with Guru, the sadhus, and Shastra.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Let's see this. Any other comment? Did I miss anyone's comment? Partha Sarati Prabhu. Oh yes, I thought I saw you. Just sharing realization, as it says, empty mind is devil's mind. Keep mind busy and engaged, but always in spirituality. Weekends with devotees and cut unwanted talks and develop a pleasure environment around listening classes and engage in any service with our capacity. I see minor change in myself after I got the ISKCON Birmingham Devotees Association. Yes, association with devotees makes our mind strong. Thank you. Okay, dear devotees, anyone else got any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
When someone says to you, I have a gut feeling, and this gut feeling, I really feel I need to follow it. Is that the mind or the intelligence?
It could be three things. it could be the mind, it could be the intelligence, or it can be the super soul. Like inspiration, Prabhupada says, what does this word inspiration? What does it mean? Where does it come from? And Prabhupada says, this comes from the super soul within the heart, guiding the living entity towards some goal. So someone may ask the question then, oh, okay, if I'm feeling some inspiration and some inclination, is that can it be my mind? Can it be my intelligence? Or is it the super soul dictating? Should I follow this inspiration I'm feeling? Again, it's the same answer I gave to Namrata Mataji. Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. They will verify or confirm what it is.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Okay, dear devotees, anyone else got any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much for your attendance, your lovely questions, and your participation. All glories to your service. We'll close with Vaishnava Pranam.
Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Thank you, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Prabhuji.
so much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.